By nature, when more money goes in my pocket, I usually don't think about giving more. By nature, when I hear that I'm going to get a raise, or I'm going to get a bonus, or I got a tax refund, be honest. Usually, when I hear that, my mind automatically thinks to how I'm going to consume it. What I'm going to spend it on. Now I can afford to take that vacation. Now I can afford to buy that new screen TV, big screen TV. Now I can finally get a new Galileo. Our mind naturally, when we hear we're going to get a bonus, we think, what can we get for ourselves? How can I change it so that my mind thinks in a different way? That I don't think about what I can get, but I think about what I can give. Answer: I must become an intentional giver. I must become an intentional giver. What do I mean by an intentional giver? What I'm saying is, we can no longer be passive in our giving. We must seek to be proactive. Do it intentional, not just leftover giving or whenever after the fact giving. Giving is not something that it's at the end of the week that I figure out, well, what's kind of left over. I want to be intentional in my giving. I want to have a plan for my giving. I want to be proactive and prayerful and determine how I can be a better giver. Just like I said a minute ago, most of us are intentional consumers. Most of us are very proactive consumers, meaning we scheme and plot how we can consume more. If I don't eat out for a month, I will have saved such and such, so then I can buy such and such. If I carpool to work, then I don't have to pay for gas, and if I do that for a year, I'll save enough for a down payment so I can spend it on this house. We scheme and we plot out ways that we can consume more. That's called being an intentional consumer. How many of us do the same plotting, the same scheming, so that we can give more? If I save this and cut back here, then I can give more. None of us. Because we're rich. Rich people don't like to give. I shouldn't say all rich people, but you know what I'm trying to say. In the end, we are not as good at giving as we may think we are. We are a whole heck of a lot better at consuming. We need to change that and become intentional. 2 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 7. Let each one give as he proposes in his heart, not grudgingly or of necessity, for God loves a cheerful giver. What we need to do is pray and seek how we can be better givers, not grudgingly, not because I made you or I guilted you into it for a few months of the year, but how you can be a cheerful giver, realizing that, as the Lord said, that truly it is more blessed to give than to receive. Like, if we really believe it is more blessed to give than to receive, why would we spend so much time plotting and scheming about how we can get more as opposed to how we can give more? There are some people who do plot and scheme how to give. Just a couple weeks ago in the sermon, Abunam Shoy gave us a story. I don't know if you remember. It was maybe like 2 or 3 weeks ago. He's talking about a bishop in Egypt. Okay? Here's a cool story. I like the story very much. He's talking about a bishop in Egypt who's a very elderly, like high-ranking, been around forever. He's in Upper Egypt, in one of the poor areas. And the people really love this man. So people who were in Egypt, they would move to the States, okay, but they still wanted to keep a connection with their beloved bishop. So they would call him maybe around Christmas, Thanksgiving, whatever. Say happy Thanksgiving, or maybe they don't have a thing. You know what I'm trying to say. Whatever. They just call him and say, hey. Maybe not Thanksgiving wasn't the best of examples. Christmas. Say Merry Christmas. He would pick up the phone, and they would say, hello, this is so-and-so calling from America. His first response would be, how much did this phone call cost you? And they would respond and say, no, don't worry about it. Money's not a problem. He would say, hang up the phone and use the money to give it to the church. And he would say, don't call me. I'm fine. You're fine. Hang up the phone and use the money that you would be spending to give it to the church. There's a man who realizes that it is more blessed to give than to receive. And there's a man who wants to be a good giver. And he wants you to be a good giver and not a leftover giver or an after-the-fact giver, but how can we be better givers? So for me and you, how can I be an intentional giver? 2 ways. First thing that we will all commit to do today. I will return to God what belongs to God. I will return to God what belongs to God. The first step of being a better giver, an intentional giver, is to stop stealing from God. How do we steal from God? Well, look here. Giving is an easy subject to talk about. But do you know where giving becomes difficult? When I pull this out. Giving is very easy. It's very nice. Christmas time, fa la la la, everything's very nice, cheerful. Until I sit down at my desk, I pull this out, and I start to write the number. What happens when I write the number, that number's a lot bigger than I expected. And what do we instantly do when we see that number? Every one of us does the same thing. What could I be doing with that number? What could I be doing if I wasn't writing that last 0 there? What could I be doing with that 0? And our mind starts to go places. I'm talking about tithing right here. And tithing is something, like I said this last week. There isn't a person in the universe who doesn't know the importance of tithing, who doesn't know that tithing is commanded from the start of the Bible to the end of the Bible, who doesn't know that if you don't tithe, you are stealing money from God. Yet despite that, several people still don't tithe. Leviticus chapter 27, verse 30. The tithe has been around from a lot longer than you realize. God was talking and he was saying, all the tithe of the land, whether of seed or of the land or fruit of the tree is the Lord's, it is holy to the Lord. Your tithe, the principle of the tithe was that 10%, tithe means 10% of everything you give back to God. Not 10% belongs to God. Not 10% belongs to God. It all belongs to God. But 10% you give back to God, because that is like, he is saying that when you have fruits, give me the first 10% of the fruits. When you have trees, give me the first 10% of the trees. When you have land, give me the first 10% of the land. When you have fries, give me the first 10% of your fries. It's a principle that's seen cover to cover of the Bible. What I'm saying is, you're not really giving at this point. You're just giving God what belongs to Him. Malachi chapter 3 verse 10 says, bring all the tithes into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house. I like how he said, not just bring the tithe, he said bring all the tithe. Because he knew how me and you think. We cut corners. 10%, 8%, 7.5%. We're in the ballpark. We just rounded the corner a little bit early. He said, if you want to round the other direction. Don't round this direction. Anyone's allowed to round that side, but don't round this side. He said, bring me not just the tithe, which you may think is just this and that. Bring me all the tithe. Bring it where? Where do we take it to?